Okay, so I went to the U.S. Treasury sanction database. First off, didn't know that was a thing. It was in fact a thing. And what I found connects directly, and when I say directly, I mean directly, to what's happening right now. And child, listen, these aren't random countries. No, these aren't random countries at all. Like, this is it's like they're actively listed. The list was recently updated, and at this point, it's active listing, active updates, and the target, right? You like, girl, that seemed like heavy language. Let me pull my notes up right now. Look at this right here on the screen. Look at the dates, right? 2025, what, last year? And 2026, this year, right? This right now is March 2026. It's actually the 22nd of March in 2026, right? Okay, y'all see those dates, right? Oh, okay. Listed in there, you should see that's real current. What? Russia, Iran, and Venezuela. Okay? Look at this. Russia, Iran, and Venezuela. Okay? So, you can't tell me we're not getting into these receipts. But here's where it really gets interesting. Here's where it gets really interesting. These are the same countries that were listed in what? They were listed as priorities in what? Project 25. Okay? So we're not just looking at headlines. No, we're not just looking at headlines. Mm-mm. We're looking at alignment. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at alignment between policy, planning, and posture. That's what we're looking at. Matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and read this to you. Check it out. Whether each foreign policy decision must first ask the question, what is the interest of the American people? U.S. military engagement must clearly fall within U.S. interests, but fiscally responsible, and protect American freedom, liberty, and sovereignty, all while recognizing communist China as the greatest threat to the U.S. interests. Thus, with respect to Ukraine, continued U.S. involvement must be fully paid for, limit to military aid, while European allies address Ukraine's economic need and have a clearly defined national security strategy that does not risk American lives. So regardless of the viewpoints, all sides agree that Putin's invasion of Ukraine is unjust and that the Ukrainian people have a right to defend their homeland. Furthermore, the conflict has severely weakened Putin's military strength and provides a boost to NATO unity and its importance to European nations. The next conservative president has a generational opportunity to bring resolution to the foreign policy tension within the movement and chart a new path forward that recognizes communist China as the defining threat of the U.S. interests in the 21st century. Now we're going to move to Korea, and then we're going to bring her to a close. National Democratic Republic of Korea, peace and stability in North Asia are vital interests of the United States. The Republic of Korea, South Korea, and Japan are critical allies for ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific. They are indispensable military, economic, diplomatic, and technology partners. The Democratic People Republic of Korea, DPRK, or North Korea, must be deterred from military conflict. The United States cannot permit the DPRK to remain a de facto nuclear power with the capacity to threaten the United States or its allies. This interest is both critical to the defense of the American homeland and the future of global non-proliferation. The DPRK must not be permitted to profit from the blatant violations of international commitments or to threaten other nations with nuclear blackmail. Both interests can only be served if the U.S. disallows the DPRK rogue regime behavior, right? So once again, very strong language when speaking. Very strong language. You have just a little bit more posturing here, right? So once again, I talked about the West Hemisphere. So I guess we will have a little bit more, you guys. The United States is vested in interest. The other international engagements, right? The Western Hemisphere. The United States has a vested interest in a relatively united and economic prosperous Western Hemisphere. Nonetheless, the regime now has or overwhelming number of socialist or progressive regimes which are at odds with the freedom and growth-oriented policies of the U.S. and other neighbors, and who increasingly pose hemispheric security threats. A new approach is therefore needed, and one that simultaneously allows the U.S. to reposture. Now, they said reposture in its best interest and help regional partners enter a new century of growth and opportunity that follow core policies must be part of the new direction, right? So the sovereign Mexico policy. The sovereign Mexico, the national security disaster, bluntly stated, bluntly stated, Mexico can no longer qualify as a first world nation. It has functionally lost its sovereignty to muscular criminal cartels that effectively run the country. The current dynamic is not good for either U.S. citizens or Mexicans. The perfect storm created by the cartel state has negative effects that are damaging the entire hemisphere. The next administration must both adopt a posture that calls for fully sovereign Mexico and take all steps at its disposal to support the result in a rapid fashion as possible. Okay. Keep in mind, this is the Project 25 recommendation for this new direction. Additionally, the fentanyl-free frontier. The same cartel that parasitically runs Mexico are also working with the PRC to fuel the largest drug crisis in the history of North America. These Mexican cartels are working closely with Chinese fentanyl precursor chemical manufacturers, importing these precursor chemicals into Mexico, manufacturing fentanyl on Mexican soil, and shipping it into the United States and elsewhere. The highly potent narcotic is having an unprecedented lethal impact on American citizens. The next administration must leverage its new insistence on a sovereign Mexico and work with other Western Hemisphere partners to halt the fentanyl crisis and put a decisive end to this unprecedented public health threat. Project 25 alignment. However, I will say that there was an executive order that was put back in the previous administration relevant to fentanyl use and essentially the opiate crisis. Generally, because I worked in mental health, I will say one thing as a side note. I have worked in mental health for 10 years, formerly post master's. And what I will say is generally when people talk about fentanyl use, they also talk about opiate use. They just put them hand in hand. So there was a war on like opiates, right? That was under the previous Trump administration. So it sounds like there's another posturing around that. If you're not familiar with that particular substance, I won't show visuals here out of respect for those who are managing relationship with substances. But you can go on places like TikTok and look like up Fenty Folded if you want to see like what prolonged episode survived it. If you go on the Department of DEA website, you can see very specific drug related information. They say that just the dust of fentanyl could completely delete someone. So the impacts of that particular substance is quite profound, but that's a different conversation than the presentation and the posturing of where it's potentially coming from and all of that. But fentanyl is certainly a public health concern. So we don't want to deny that. I just want to make sure we put that out there. And anyone who's mentioned, I hope they're able to get resources so that they can manage that relationship they have with those substances until there's no need to manage that relationship. They get to a point where they're, okay. Because it's very difficult when people are managing vices, but specifically that substance has been very volatile in the way that you observe people experience is very brutal. So that was just a side note that I was offering as someone who's worked in mental health and is kind of seeing some of the impacts of utilization. And no, I won't, when it comes to the presentation of that particular dialogue, I'm not going to put receipts being people going through there because I feel like that's not really cool to show people who are going through something or really managing a relationship that is not really manageable, being that relationship they have with the substances. And I wouldn't want to go pull videos of people, you know, kind of folded or looking sick while they're in the throes of addiction, while they're in the throes of managing that condition. Because at that point, there's very much a medical condition. All right, you made it to the end. What? I told you we was going to come with them receipts. The kids say, what? We ate. What? Because we was getting into these receipts. I know you saw that, right? Alignment. So, with that being said, if you like content like this, go ahead and like the video. That lets YouTube know that you like the content and you support it being sent out to other people so that we can make sure that this information is being accessible out in the community who it's designed for, right? If you're someone where you like, listen, I like to marinate. Listen, we do a lot of marinate no information here on this channel. That's not a problem. Stay along and stick with us. And once you're ready, go ahead, subscribe. Subscribe only when you're ready, right? If you're really excited about this content, go ahead, comment, like, subscribe, and even share it to people who you feel like would also benefit from it. Once again, that lets YouTube know that you like this content. We do a lot of breakdowns on this channel. So I'm really hoping that you like this content and that you're finding something that you like. But also note, there may be other content, other mini-series, courses and things that are on this channel that you have not yet had an opportunity to explore. Go ahead on the page, look into that. We have lots of things happening here on this site. This is Legally Everywhere, where we're what, child? We looking into everything. This has been a very unique experience, and I will see you what in the next video because we want to do some more breakdowns. See you then. See you there next time.